Here we are with another multiplying lesson with decimals. Today we'll be using expanded form. We'll use expanded form and place value to multiply a decimal and a whole number. Still working on different strategies to use for this so that when we get to the shortcut way to do it, kind of how everyone does it, you'll understand why we're doing it the way that we're doing it. The length of a day is the amount of time it takes a planet to make a complete rotation on its axis. On Jupiter, there are 9 8/10 Earth hours in a day, so it rotates pretty quickly. We need to know then how many Earth hours there are in 46 days on Jupiter. We're going to use a model and partial products to solve the problem. So our problem, of course, is 46 times 9 8/10. Our first step we're going to do is to rewrite the factors in expanded form. 46 is going to become 40 and 6. 9 8/10 is going to become 9 and 8/10, like that. Next, we're going to set up a model to multiply. We're going to use a box model. You might have done this before with different whole numbers. We're going to do it today with decimals. On the side, I'm going to put my 40 and 6. And then across the top, I'm going to put my 9 and my 8/10. Okay. Then, as I'm multiplying these together, I'll be multiplying the numbers that come together in the box. So this first box will be 40 times 9. I know 4 times 9 is 36. And then that 0 on the end. Down here, I've got 6 times 9, that's just 54. Okay, then I have over here where I'm multiplying by the decimals. I'm just going to kind of keep in my head a little bit. You can do a little side work if you want to. 40 times 8/10 is kind of like doing 4 times 8. So that would be 320. And then a decimal point, I've got one decimal point here, one decimal place, I should say, here. So my product will also have a decimal point, one decimal point. With 6 times 8/10, right here, here's 6 times 8/10. I'm going to think of 6 times 8 is 48. And then again, I've got one digit in the decimals here, so I should have 1 here in my product. Okay, next I need to add my partial products together. So I'm going to do that out to the side because I'm out of room. You probably have room to do it underneath there though. So I'm going to add together 360 and 54, 32, and then 4 8/10. Notice I'm thinking back to that last chapter and keeping my decimals lined up. You can come back and put in a decimal and a 0 there to help you keep things lined up. And then just add like normal. So that's 8/10. There's my decimal. That is 10. That is 15. And then 450 and 8/10. So answering the question, there are 450 and 8/10 Earth hours in 46 days on Jupiter. Let's look at our next problem. A day on the planet Mercury lasts about 58 6/10 Earth days, so really long days. That would be bad to have a bad day there on Mercury because it would last forever. It would last 58 6/10 Earth days. So our question says, how many Earth days are there in 14 days on Mercury? For this problem, we're going to use the strategy similar to yesterday with using place value patterns to find the product. So our our factors are 14 times 58 6/10. We're going to set this up kind of like we did our problems yesterday. So I'm going to do 58 6/10. Multiply that by 14. Notice when I'm multiplying, I'm not worried about where my decimals are lining up at. It doesn't matter in multiplying. Adding and subtracting, it matters that our decimals are lined up. With multiplying, it does not matter. All right, now I'm going to, kind of like yesterday, think, okay, well, if I multiply that by 10, that will get me a whole number. 586 times 14. That means that this product would also be 10 times greater. I'm going to go ahead and multiply this now with my whole numbers. So take a moment to do that. That's 32, 34, 23. Here's my 0. I'm going to do my times by 10. There we go. Add it together. I think I wrote a little bit too big. 7, that's 8. Okay, so I have 8,204. But I'm not done yet. Remember where I came here and I multiplied by 10? I have to now undo that. So I'm going to multiply both my top number here, my top factor, and then my product by 1/10. Okay, so then I have 58 and 6/10 back times 14. And then my product, I don't need to refigure it out. I can just put the digit there and then give it a decimal. So, answering the question, there are 820 and 4/10 Earth days in 14 days on Mercury. Okay, let's go back to the model just for a moment to practice that again. I have 52 times 35 hundredths. So I'm going to get my square going. Okay, I'm going to break up 52 into 50 and 2. And my 35 hundredths will be 3/10 and 5 hundredths. All right, here we go. Now our multiplying might be a little trickier this time. We just have to kind of think about our decimal placement here though. For 50 times 3/10, I'm going to do 5 times 3 is 15. I've got 0 in my factor here, so that's actually 150. But then I also have a decimal here, a digit in my decimal, so my product also has to have a decimal with the product. My next one, I've got 3/10 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6, but I do have one decimal there in my 3/10, so that becomes 6/10. For my 50 times 5 hundredths, 5 times 5, 25 with the 0 for the 50, but I also have 2 decimal places here to keep into account, so I'm going to have 2 decimal places here as well. So that will become 2 and 50 hundredths, or 2 and 5/10. And then right here I'll have 2 times 5/10. 2 times 5 is 10. And then I have 2 digits in my decimals here, so I will have 2 here also. Okay. Now if you're not sure on the multiplying, particularly multiplying times the decimals like this, make sure that you jot that down as a question, and we will answer it in class. We talked about it a little bit in class with lesson 4.3, or if you're doing this early, we will talk about it with 4.3 in class. But make sure that that you know how we're getting all of those, and we'll start talking about the shortcuts with 4.3 and then with 4.4. Okay, back to this model strategy. My next step is I'm going to add these together. So I've got 15, and I have 2 and 5/10. I have 6/10, and I have 1/10. Notice that I have zeros here that I could include. I just chose not to, just to give myself one less column to worry about. My decimals are all lined up, and so I'm just going to add. That's 12. There's my decimal, that's 8, and then the 1. So 18 and 2/10. Okay, this one we're going to go back to that place value pattern to multiply. So I'm going to set it up like this, 9 and 18 hundredths times 16. Okay, I want to make this be a whole number, so I can do that by multiplying by 100. Sorry, by this I mean I want my factor here, 9 and 1800ths, to be a whole number. If I multiply by 100, that will make it be a whole number. So 918 times 16, that also, though, changes my product, remember. All right, so next I'm going to go ahead and multiply 908 times 16. So take a moment to do that with me. That's 48. That's 6 plus 4 more is 10. 6 times 9, 54, plus 1 more, 55. Okay, 0. And then I've got 1 times 8, 1 times 1, 1 times 9. Add that up. And that's 6, 14. Okay, so I got my product with the whole numbers, but remember I have to undo this part now. So to undo the 100, multiplying by 100, I can multiply by 100th with a th on there. And that will get me back to 9 and 1800ths times 16. I don't need to multiply that again. I've already multiplied it. My decimal bumps over twice. So my product here is going to be 146 and 8800ths. Okay, it is your turn to practice. We're just practicing one time with the model, one time with the place value patterns. Go ahead and work on those. When you come back, I'll have the work done, how it should look on yours, and then you can also check your answers. Okay, this first one, your work should look similar to mine. Our product is 14 and 25 hundredths. Again, if you're not sure how we're multiplying right in through here, especially with the decimals, that's trickier. Make sure that you get your answers in class, because that's super important that you know how to do that. So make sure that we take care of your questions in class. Okay, on to the next problem. We're using place value patterns to solve this problem. Okay, in this next one, we're using place value patterns. Your product should be 3,342 and 2/10. Your work should look similar to mine. We should be able to see where you're multiplying to get this to be a whole number, and then where you were undoing that to get it back to having decimals. So make sure that you include that in your work. Okay, thanks for getting through math today. Make sure that you check your understanding. Write something that you learned or remembered, or a tip, or a question. Definitely a question if you still have one.